Revenue Management Final Project for Group 1. Team members are Dennis Cox, Justin Redmond, Meredith Sexton, and Amanda Taylor. Group 1 decided to conduct analysis of national park demand data to help advise the manager of a national park system lodge on their pricing and revenue management policy. We specifically chose to analyze the Zion National Park in Springdale, Utah, and the Zion Lodge. We will be discussing the problem, our data analysis, recommendations, and conclusion. Zion National Park is located in southwest Utah and consists of 229.1 square miles. Park attendance has increased over the last several years. And while there are several hotels around the park, there's only one hotel within the park, and that's the Zion Lodge. Peak park attendance is usually in the summer. The Zion Lodge was built in the 1920s and was subsequently rebuilt in the 1960s. The Zion Lodge website advertises 100 hotel rooms, 22 suites, and 40 cabins, but after contacting the lodge directly, we found that only 39 cabins were available. The problem. While the number of park visitors increases consistently every year, the number of rooms available within the national park remains the same. As a result, the Zion Lodge sells up to a year in advance in some seasons. Lawmakers are reducing funding for the National Park Service, so alternative and creative revenue solutions are needed. Maximum rates are mandated by the National Park Service, but pricing is consistent with competing hotels outside of the park. The rate for the cabin is $209.69. The hotel rooms are $219.69, and the suite is $270.69. These are rates based on the 2016 calendar.
For the data analysis section, we had to make certain assumptions and establish some baseline information before we conducted our analysis. The first thing is we had to assume some type of family size. So we were given our data and the amount of people who stayed in concession lodging, but we needed to kind of manipulate this number into how many rooms were going to be included or rented out in the Zion Lodge. So we determined about a 3-person family would be average. The second thing that we needed to assume was price consistency between the years of 2016 and 2018. This was because that pricing was only available from February of 2017 through February of 2018, while the most recent demand information was only available in 2016. So we needed to assume a consistency amongst these 3 years. The third item was we assumed 100 regular hotel rooms at Zion Lodge. When we spoke with the employee at Zion, he was able to give us exact numbers for exactly how many cabins they had and also the total amount of hotel rooms and suites. He could not delineate between exactly how many hotel rooms and exactly how many suites, but we needed this for our pricing purposes. And finally, our last assumption was the variable cost per room. We equated to about $75, and this would account for overhead and other items that the lodge would have to take care of. For our demand, the latest demand monthly average that we had was for the year 2016 and was 7,204. Now, for 2017, we forecast that average monthly demand would rise to 8,293. For this forecast, we used a triple exponential smoothing, which accounts for seasonality. We chose alpha, beta, and gamma parameters to reduce the mean squared of the estimation data, and we found that this would be a better estimate of our future data. For pricing and protection level, we wanted to capture the higher willingness to pay from our customers. So for pricing, we used the ScanPro method to optimize this price. We had data of pricing from our Zion Lodge And also we use pricing information from the Zion Mountain Ranch, one of its closest competitors. So as our prices went up or the Zion Mountain Ranch's prices decreased, we could see its effect on the demand. From this, we located the demand at the optimal price point, which turned out to be a very even $450. The demand was approximately 30, and we found the demand at the low price point. The demand was 135 for the lowest price point offered by Zion Lodge was about $130. From here, we use this information to run a simulation modeling setup, and we found that a protection level of 43 rooms was ideal. So to summarize our recommendations, we can employ some overbooking strategies with the expectation of some cancellations to help increase revenue. We definitely want to reserve a number of rooms to sell at a higher price point, and this will capture the higher willingness to pay from some of our customers. Also, we can adjust for the seasonality of demand rather than having the same price year round. And as always, we need to continuously reevaluate revenue management strategies on a regular basis to ensure effectiveness. We also want to consider ethical situations, so this limiting access to those who are willing to pay more, but it keeps the national park from being accessible to a lot more individuals. We do have lots of past data available to use rather than the assumptions that we used for our strategy, and you risk losing some customers to outside hotels. But the benefit is revenue management strategies, when implemented, can increase the revenue for the National Park Services, and this kind of helps mitigate the losses in traditional funding that we are seeing.